the tensions between the United States of America and Venezuela is affecting Latin American countries. America's hostile posture against the South American country is linked to oil interest, the country claims. The United States of America has not responded to a communique by the Venezuelan government denouncing the U.S. military aggression against it. But let's discuss this further now with SABC News correspondent, specialist correspondent, Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, do we have anything yet out of the Venezuelan government just yet pertaining to what the next steps are that they seek to take?
The Venezuelan government only issued that statement that you read earlier on, and when you look at the content of the statement, it's a clear directive for mass mobilization directed at ordinary Venezuelans to protect Venezuela, but also the president of Venezuela indicating the kind of deployment as it relates to the military and the law enforcement agency, even declaring a decree similar to a state of emergency as an intention to protect civilians. That's according to the statement. And also saying that suggests that now they are embarking on an armed struggle. In other words, ordinary civilians. You would recall that the ordinary civilians were armed few weeks ago, few days ago, with the intention that should there be any standoff between Venezuela and America, they must also act, not only looking at the military or the forces in that country. And lastly, I think what is also important is Venezuela quoting the UN Charter, Article 1 and 2, in respect of sovereignty of state and territorial independence, and Venezuela indicating that they've requested their ambassador at the UN to request an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council to discuss this issue. And of course, even though the United States of America hasn't officially pronounced on this action, Venezuela is putting a blame on the United Nations and saying that they condemn the military aggression by the U.S.
Yeah. Now, we know that the U.S. president needs senatorial approval and consensus before executing strikes on a foreign nation. What's the word coming out of the U.S. Senate regarding these latest strikes?
The media in the United States of America is reporting that the Senate was not consulted, or there was no approval from the Senate. But it is not surprising. You would recall he did the same when he was launching attack on Iran last year, and also late last year, December, when those attacks were launched on the northern west of Nigeria. And therefore, you know, President Trump sometimes operates differently. And you know that he even took a decision to change the Department of Defense to war. And now it makes sense in terms of why it was changed to Department of War. Clearly, America will be engaged in different attacks in different parts of the world. You know, it's in the war mode, one can say.
Yeah. Let's talk about the international community and their response to it. Have we heard anything from the allies and partners of Venezuela?
We haven't seen any reaction from Russia and China yet, the most critical countries outside Latin America or outside the Caribbean, which are the neighbors of the United States of America. We only saw the neighbors. I'm talking about Brazil, I'm talking about other countries near, you know, United States of America, the Latin American bloc, because they did earlier on raise concerns that the standoff between the U.S. and Venezuela will affect peace and security in their own region. You know, even in Brazil, at times you have these opposition who are using the United States of America to mobilize support. You have a similar situation with Cuba. the opposition, those who have fled the country, doing the same, working with the United States of America. And therefore, it is no surprise that the Latin American countries and the Caribbean are worried because there's a trend by their citizens who are opposed to governments to leave the country, go to the U.S. or Europe, and use those countries for mass mobilization and also support for resources. And now we see even, it looks like military.
Yeah. I want to read you, Sophie, an official statement coming out from the government of Iran just right now on this. It says the U.S. military aggression against an independent state that is a member of the United Nations is a gross violation of regional and international peace and security, the consequences of which will infect the entire international system and will further expose the system based on the UN Charter to erosion and destruction. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Iran, while recalling Venezuela's inherent right to defend its national sovereignty, in territorial integrity and right to self-determination, notes the legal and moral responsibility of all government and international organizations, especially the United Nations and its Security Council, to immediately stop the illegal U.S. aggression against Venezuela, and emphasizes the need to take necessary measures to hold accountable the planners and perpetrators of the crimes during this military aggression. Now, that's coming out of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the Islamic Republic of Iran on the latest attacks on Venezuela. It's quite expected that we would have seen a statement coming out from Iran, which is also an adversary of America. We remember just a few months ago that America had struck 3 supposed nuclear plants in Iran with air missiles. What do you read into this?
Well, as I pointed out earlier on when we started at 9 o'clock, Iran should be worried because signs are there that the United States of America is likely going to attack Iran. You'd recall that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, was in the United States of America where he met President Trump. And many people are saying behind closed doors, the issue of Iran dominated the talks. And yesterday we saw a statement that Venezuela had sent some military capability to Iran, and that relationship is strong. And it's no surprise that in the Middle East you have Iran issuing that statement, a enemy to United States of America also, and by virtue of being targeted in the past, they are also vulnerable. But of interest to me, Oliver, when you read that statement where they call on international community to use legal means and the multilateral body UN. Multilateral system is collapsing because of the United States of America. It doesn't listen to it. But secondly, the legal means. South Africa did that using the UN system and the legal system to go to the ICJ to request the ICJ to intervene in stopping the loss of life in the Middle East, in Palestine, in Gaza. But the world didn't support that, and America is now punishing South Africa for that move. So it will be difficult for any country to go to the ICJ and seek intervention using legal means within the UN system to stop America as it relates to the tension with Venezuela. And therefore, we are a typical example what happened to South Africa when using legal means with the legal system of multilateral body, the UN.
Yeah. What we read from the statement coming out from President Maduro is that he's effectively signed an order now claiming and declaring armed resistance to the U.S. That is to say, if they strike back and or attempt to defend themselves, America would be entitled to invoke Article 5 of NATO, which means that the signatories and member states of NATO have to, alongside America then attack Venezuela. Do you anticipate that that will at all be a point of contention?
It will be a point of contention because that will mean a war being declared between Venezuela and the United States of America. And I think that will be a problem. But Venezuela is correct. These are the available options in terms of the multilateral system or the multilateral organization, United Nations, where member states have signed up to. But unfortunately, you know that within the Security Council, this is likely not going to see the light of the day because you will have those P5 members with veto powers taking different positions. And one veto will result in a situation where you won't see that action being taken. And America, being a member of the P5, will be the first country to use its veto power. This issue also will be problematic to European countries that are members of the Security Council because they are also having reservations as it relates to the leadership of the presidency or the government of Nicolas Maduro. That is why some people from Venezuela are mobilizing support from Spain. We know the main opposition lady who got the Nobel Peace Prize is mobilizing from Spain, and therefore this becomes very problematic.
Yeah, Sophie Mokoena, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for that update. Really do appreciate it. We'll keep an eye on that as new details emerge and as, of course, this developing story unfolds.